Welcome to my talk. Thank you to anybody who is joining us in the MST, where it is 8 o'clock in the morning. It is not 8 o'clock in the morning in the UK. It is 3 p.m. It is extremely grey outside. There was snow a little while ago, just to set the scene for you all. I am Jo, or Tonblackberry. You might know me as in different areas of the internet. My pronouns are she, her. Give you a quick what I'm wearing. You can't see it, but I am wearing Meta's grimoire. Just give you a little, there you go. And I'm repping some indie brands today. I'm wearing my Cougar necklace and my Miss Danger shop brooch as well. So there you go. You can't see it, but it's here anyway. So welcome to my talk on the film The Last Unicorn, which I have decided to call Now That I'm a Woman, Everything is Strange, which is a quote from the film. So to give you a quick pre-overview, I'm going to spend about 3/4 of an hour doing my presentation, and then there will be time for questions at the end. So I probably won't, if you ask me a question during it, probably won't see it, but they should be put to me at the end. So hope you enjoy. So why did I decide to do this? Why have I done this? Why am I giving you a presentation on a film? So another quick bit about me. I am a recovering ex-academic. My ex-specialism was film. My PhD is in world cinemas. I concentrated on gender. That's like my theoretical background. That's what I spent 4 years writing a big thing on. So that's a little bit more about me. Why did I choose to talk about this film? So I first came across this film. I don't even know how old I was, but I was very, very young. I was definitely primary school age. And I remember my family picked this film up on video from a big electrical superstore. I probably asked for it to be picked up because it was a cartoon and it had a unicorn on the front, and I was probably about 7 or 8, I reckon. And I remember it making a really big impression on me. I then sort of occasionally thought about it after, but I didn't rewatch it again until a few years ago. And I thought, wow, damn, I was right. This film is great. I remembered it for a good reason. It was really good. And then I watched it again more recently. I thought, there is some really weird stuff going on here with gender and relationships and bodies and the things which are sort of my special research interests. I thought, damn, maybe I should like write something about this or do something about this. Then forgot about it. And then when Mystical Tea Garden was announced, I thought, oh, it would be nice if I could do a presentation. What could I do a presentation on? I know, I can do it on this film, yeah. I think it definitely fits the theme of mystical, magical things, gardens, nature, all that kind of stuff. And so that is why I decided to do this presentation. So how will this go? First, I'm going to give you an introduction to the film. Then I am going to go over the plot. So I'm going to do a plot synopsis. Don't know how recently any of you have watched it. Things happen. Most of the plot is condensed into like the last third of the film. So I'll go over all of that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Japanese-American co-production context, which I think a lot of you might be interested in, sort of special area of ours. And then I'm going to do some analysis. And these are the discussion topics that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about female monsters. I'm going to talk about masculine control. I'm going to talk about the unicorn and becoming a woman. And I'm also going to talk about ambivalent adulthood and ambivalent endings. So now you've got a bit of a shape of where we're going with this. I am going to start with an introduction to the film. It is based on a novel from 1968, written by Peter Beagle, which I have right here. There you go. It is not exactly a one-to-one adaptation. There's a few differences which I will talk about because I think they're quite interesting. Obviously, the film is only 92 minutes or so, and the book is, I mean, it's not massive, but it's a whole book. There's a lot of stuff they just didn't put in. It was produced and directed by Rankin Bass in 1982, so I was -6 years old. Don't know how long it took for those videos to sort of come out and for it to reach various places. The voice acting cast is really, really good, I think, and it includes Mia Farrow, who plays the unicorn / Lady Amalthea, Christopher Lee, who I'm sure you all know as a very famous character actor as King Haggard, and Angela Lansbury, who you might know from Benton Broomsticks, among other things, as Mommy Fortuna. It cost $3 million and it made back about $6.5 million. So it made its money back, but it wasn't like a massive runaway success. Also, importantly, the theme tune bangs. The whole soundtrack bangs, bangers wall to wall, really, really good. The music was all done by a band just called America. That's it. That's their name. Yeah, and I would recommend going and listening to the soundtrack if you get a moment to refresh your mind. So, what happens in this film? A synopsis, here we go. A unicorn learns that she is the last of her kind, and she sets off on a journey to find out what has happened to the others. On her way, she meets Mommy Fortuna, a witch who keeps mystical creatures captive, Schmendrick, a wizard, or is he? It's confusing, and Molly Grew, who is part of an outlaw band. She is someone called Captain Cully's common law wife. Don't really get much fleshing out of Captain Cully in the film. There's a little bit more in the book. Schmendrick, Molly, and the unicorn go to King Haggard's castle, where they know the other unicorns are hidden somewhere, and they know it's something to do with this Red Bull figure. When they arrive, the Red Bull tries to attack the unicorn. To save her, Schmendrick turns the unicorn into a human, who he names Lady Amalthea, who just pulls this name out of like nowhere. Amalthea has an existential crisis immediately, the first of many existential crises in this film. They just keep coming. Lady Amalthea falls in love with King Haggard's son, Prince Lear. This is where all the plot now happens in this like last bit. They've all come together and now all the plot happens. Molly, Lear, Schmendrick, and Amalthea go to find the Red Bull's lair, but they get trapped. The Red Bull tries to chase and kill them, realizing Amalthea's true nature. Schmendrick then turns her back into the unicorn, and Lear then sacrifices himself to the Red Bull, and all the hidden unicorns come out of the sea. Haggard's castle then collapses into the sea. Haggard is killed. I told you there's a lot of plot in this last bit. And the unicorn then brings Lear back to life. They all have a big existential chat about sadness and fulfillment. And the unicorn goes off to find the other unicorns. The end. And that is a plot summary of the film version. As I said, the book has lots more in-between bits. There's a whole subplot with what happens with the other, the village, which isn't in the film, like, at all. So, the bit I'm going to talk about now is about the Japanese-American co-production context. So the art style is extremely anime. It's not surprising because it was actually animated by Topcraft, who were a Japanese animation studio who also produced Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. They went bankrupt in 1985 and they were bought out by Miyazaki, who sacked most of the staff and renamed it Studio Ghibli. So they were basically like the proto Studio Ghibli. The remaining Topcraft animators formed their own studio for a while, and they eventually rejoined Ghibli after Ghibli was bought out by Disney. While they were in their own separate studio, they were also making some other American productions. So they also worked on things like Thundercats. So you can sort of see what sort of time and era this was in animation. And I'm now going to talk a little bit more about this. So here you can see this really interesting mix of Eastern and Western styles in this film. I think this is probably why I latched onto this film so much as a child. When I was a kid, it was back in the day, it was basically impossible to find anime on UK TV. You had to have Sky TV, you had to sit and watch Fox Kids and just wait to watch one episode of Sailor Moon if they deigned to show it, or Pokemon very, very occasionally, or you would have to stay up late and watch Toonami or something on another satellite channel. It was very, very hard to find. When I watched this as a kid, I think that something in my brain pinged and went, this is really close to that thing that you like, but you can't actually find. And I think that's what happened. And I think that's also why a lot of people in the J fashion community are attached to this. Yeah, I think that's probably got a lot to do with it. So here you can see Prince Lear, that's Prince Lear on the left. He is wearing Western style knight's costume. Bit of context for the scene: he has gone to kill this dragon to prove to Lady Amalthea that he is he can prove he's like her true match or whatever. And he is killing this dragon. You can see that this dragon is very much an East Asian style dragon. It's got the whiskers. It's animated in a very serpentine way. It flies through the air. It's not a traditional Western style dragon with the wings. It's an East Asian style one. The background, I would say, is kind of a mix. You could interpret this as the sort of watercolor landscape that you might find in East Asian style, or you could just say it's a mountain. You can do like whatever you want. This is the beauty of film interpretation. Say what you want as long as you've got textual evidence for it. Pro tip. So yeah, and I think this, and also interesting tidbit, the noise for the dragon in the scene was actually taken from a Godzilla animation. So it's like a genuine mishmash of Western and Eastern styles in this one screenshot. I think with the unicorn, you can really see, I've just realized that I've done this screenshot and I've included the character designer. The character designer may have designed it in this sort of, again, a mishmash between Western and Eastern animation styles. I think that the unicorn looks like a shoujo manga heroine because she has got big eyes, she has huge pupils, she's got the key big reflecty bit in her pupil, which you've got to have if you're doing a manga or anime heroine. And also, I think that the way that hair and manes in this film are animated is very influenced by Art Nouveau, which is something which you can also see in a lot of influences on shoujo manga, which is why it's all very flowy. It's all there's so much movement in it. Everything is very long and elongated. It's a similar set of references. She looks so sad in this screenshot. It's because it's from the end of the film, so she's really sad. Lady Amalthea, which of course is the unicorn's human form, again, very, very similar. You can see that she looks a lot like how you would imagine a shoujo manga heroine or a girl in shoujo anime to look. She has the very pointed chin. She's got the super long neck. Again, you can see her hair. I didn't include any clips in this because of copyright issues, but if you watch it, you will see the way her hair moves, again, is all very flowy. It's that Art Nouveau style where everything is very organic looking. And she's also got the same eyes as when she was a unicorn. I was about to say a horse, not a horse, unicorn, very important. When she was in her unicorn form, she's got these massive eyes with really long eyelashes and the reflection in her eye again. And just to show you exactly what I mean, here you can see that she looks super similar to, this is the front cover of the first English translation of the first volume of Sailor Moon. And if you look, their hairstyles are really similar. They've got this sort of moon fringe, the same sort of volume up top, the same movement in their hair, long necks, pointy chin. Their eyes are actually really similar as well, with the big reflections in it. So I thought just to sort of show you exactly what I mean with that comparison, I would show you them side to side so you can really see they're really similar. And again, if you watch it, you will see. Oh, and now, should have warned you, there's some theory in this talk. I meant to mention that in my introduction, but I didn't. So I think that when you are doing film analysis, it is helpful to use theory to kind of look at what particular characters are doing and how that reflects on certain power relationships and gender relationships. I think it's interesting. I hope you find it interesting too. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the monstrous feminine, which is a really useful term. And once you start thinking about it, you see it everywhere. I think that it's always useful to think about in the context of films with interesting gender portrayals. So the monstrous feminine is a term which was coined by Barbara Creed in her volume, The Monstrous Feminine Film, Feminism, Psychoanalysis from 1993. Creed's main argument is that cis female bodies are often abject on screen. She doesn't use the term cis. I'm putting that in there because a lot of it is about menstruation, it's about reproduction, and it's about wombs. So it's important to note that, like, that's what she means when she says female bodies. So these are the main images of femininity that she talks about. She talks about woman as archaic mother, monstrous womb, vampire, witch, possessed body, monstrous mother, and castrator. And she uses those lenses to look at lots of different horror films. It's really good. It's a really good argument. And her argument is basically that rather than portraying women always as victim on screen, sometimes women are also subverting patriarchal power through these different interesting portrayals. She uses another volume which is called Powers of Horror, an essay on objection by Julia Kristeva. This is the real theory bit, this is a proper psychoanalytical text. So Kristeva's version of the abject is about the breakdown between the self and the other, subject and object. So, and the horror and distress that causes and the power that then confers, basically. So it's about boundary crossing, and that's really important. And that's what I'm going to be talking about with this film. So Creed talks about how witches have been portrayed as monstrous over history. So if we go and look at those different things that she talks about, archaic mothers are abject because a mother isn't supposed to be old in traditional sort of viewings of motherhood. Monstrous womb. Wombs are pretty monstrous. Things are coming out of them. Things are going into them. There's a lot of boundary crossing there. They can be quite horrifying, quite scary if you think about a womb very hard. Vampires are also abject because they are crossing boundaries between the living and the dead. The same with possessed bodies. Witches are abject because they are crossing realms. So they are crossing realms between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, which then causes distress and gives the witch power. Monstrous mothers, again, it's the same thing. Mothers aren't supposed to be monstrous. Mothers are supposed to be good and sweet and light, and all Lolitas should be lovely. Same thing you could say about mothers in like conventional portrayals of them on screen, and castrators, so taking away male power. And there you go. That is a quick whistle-stop tour of the abject and the monstrous feminine on screen. So I think that you can see this a lot in this film. There are lots of monsters in it, and I'm going to talk about them now. Here we have Mommy Fortuna. Mommy Fortuna is, firstly, a witch. You can see the way that she has been animated here is really interesting. She is old and grizzled and gnarly. Also, she has a tree on her head, which is kind of cool. Sometimes there's a bird in it. If you compare the way that she is animated to other magic users, so this is Schmendrick, who I've spoken about before. You can see that Schmendrick is he's just a normal looking man. And this is Mabrook, who is a court magician. He's only a side character. He doesn't really get much attention. So you can see that these two guys, they look pretty normal. Mabrook looks a little bit weird, but he's not quite so gnarled and quite so grisly as Mommy Fortuna. If we go back again, let's see if I can work out how to go. Oh, no, wrong way. There we go. You can see she's like properly grizzled and haggard, etc. And also she's got teeth sticking out, so she looks really, really scary. Also, I think what I find really interesting about Mommy Fortuna is she is not just abject and boundary crossing because she's a witch. She also keeps magical creatures captive. So this is abject for lots of reasons. She is basically, again, crossing that boundary between the magical realm and the physical realm. Also, she is trying to do this to make money, I think. She has like her traveling circus, which assumedly is a way of her getting money from punters. So what she's doing is taking these magical beings and then putting them into a capitalist context, which is gross and makes you uncomfortable. And again, like that reaction is part of what I would consider fitting into the monstrous feminine. She's not in it hugely, but she is interesting, I think. Also, there is the harpy, who you can see here. The harpy is a real harpy. It is captured by Mommy Fortuna for her circus. The way the animators have done this image of the harpy, you can see, is they've taken something that you kind of know what it is, and then they've amped it up. So they've made this vulture even scarier and even like more terrifying by emphasizing all the lines on its face. Also, it has lots of boobs, which I think you can see here. It's very scary. The noises that it makes are pretty horrifying, and it does actually manage to eventually break its bounds. So the harpy is a super boundary crossing, super scary, very, very monstrous feminine bit of like scary female power. Also, we have the tree, which is a character that made a big impression on me when I was young because it's very strange. So what happens with the tree is Schmendrick gets tied to it by Captain Cully's band, and he accidentally manages to bring it to life with magic. And then what happens is that the tree becomes very instantly attached to him, and the tree says, "There is no love like a tree's love," and sort of like smushes him into her, and she gets really angry really quickly. It's really weird to watch. It's very boundary crossing because this feminine coded monster is in this weird nether region between alive, not alive, magical, not magical, sexualized. Something's being sexualized that you just wouldn't expect to be sexualized. So it's definitely a monstrous feminine object, and it's very weird, is what I have to say about that. And that is how it impacts on the viewer. So now we've spoken a little bit about the feminine coded and female characters. I'm going to move on to talk about the men, because what about the men? It's the beauty of like doing gender film analysis. You can literally just talk about everyone in it. It's great. So I'm going to talk about King Haggard and the way that he embodies patriarchal power and what kind of patriarchal power this is. King Haggard only has pleasure through control. It's more explicit in the book, but I think it comes through in the film as well. He says, I'm real depressed. I don't like anything. The only things that give me pleasure are these captured unicorns in the sea, which is an obvious representation of patriarchal power. I would argue that the unicorns are coded as feminine and female because of the way that they look. They all look like the first unicorn that you see. They all have these long eyelashes. They're all really long and slender. They all have these big eyes, which are traditionally feminine tropes. So it's basically like he's captured a load of feminine coded things, put them in the sea, and that's the only way he can be happy, which I think you can kind of obviously see that's patriarchal control. That's what's going on. And also he's a king. So there you go. The Red Bull is also a personification of this. Red Bull is very scary. There he is. Terrified me when I was young. Still scary when you watch it as an adult. The Red Bull is aggression and control and sort of mindless anger. All of these things that are sort of coded as masculine. He's real scary. I'm now going to drop into some more theory. Here we go. It's time for Foucault, because when you talk about power and control, it is helpful to use Foucault a lot. So Foucault talks about this thing called the panopticon. The panopticon was a concept which was designed by Jeremy Bentham in the 19th century. So it was after and during industrialization. It was about the way that society had kind of developed and they needed new methods of control. This is also when the police started becoming a thing. It's around that kind of time. So as you can see, he was designing this for things like factories, for prisons, for schools, and for hospitals. So situations where lots of observation and lots of behavior control is needed. The deal is, the power comes from the possibility of observation from one central point over a group. Not necessarily about the observation itself, it's about the fact that you can be observed at any time. Through this observation, the central locus of power gains knowledge and reinforces their power. So it's a self-sustaining kind of system. And it's about the people on the outside observing each other, so that the person in the middle doesn't really need to do it that much. They can do if they want. And so it's about the entire system. This is a useful kind of thing when you're talking about tech and all that kind of stuff. It's good. I think that King Haggard has created a panopticon with the unicorns in the sea. They are kept in there through some sort of self-sustaining system because they know that they could be observed by him or the Red Bull at any point. And that is what is going on. And yeah, that's my take on it. And so they're stuck there, and that's the way the patriarchal control is happening. It's through observation and through the possibility of observation. That's my take on it. We love Foucault. Some more stuff about King Haggard. He has no real connection to his lived reality in a positive way. he dismisses the magician who I showed you before, Mabruk, because he doesn't make him actually happy. Lear is a foundling, not his bio son. There is more detail on this in the book. In the book, it explains that King Haggard goes out and literally just picks a kid up off the street because he thinks it'll make him happy. This is condensed down into like one line in the film where he just goes, oh yeah, he's a foundling, and that's it. So Haggard doesn't really have a connection to the people around him or to pleasure. The only real thing that he has a connection to is the unicorns in the sea, and he can only have happiness through his own patriarchal control. He's stressful, and the voice acting of Christopher Lee with him is very good. He portrays this very well. Little bit about Molly Grew. She's not really fleshed out very much in the film at all. She is kind of a plot MacGuffin with a lot of feelings. She is supposedly Captain Cully's common law wife. She gets rid of him really quickly and just sacks him off to go and be with the unicorn and Schmendrick. I do like the way she's animated. I think that it's interesting that there's a woman who's obviously older, but she's not Haggard. She's not a crone. She's not a witch. She's an older woman, and that's interesting, I think. They could have made her like super old looking, but they didn't. This scene is really sad, and I wanted to share it with you all. So Molly and the unicorn, I found it a bit confusing about how come Schmendrick knows that she's a unicorn, and so does Molly, but lots of other people don't. Because the phrasing that is used over and over in the book and the film is men can't see unicorns, but it's not explicated whether that means men as in humans or men as in the gender binary. I think the fact that Molly knows that it's a unicorn means that there is a gendered aspect to it. She's not supernatural. Schmendrick, I think, can see that she's a unicorn because he's a wizard. I think that's what's going on here. So Molly has like this connection with her, and this is what happens when she sees her for the first time. And she has this speech where she gets very, very sad. And she says, "Where were you when I was innocent? How dare you come to me now when I am this?" Which is really, really sad. If you've been waiting to see her as long as I have, it would be the last unicorn in the world who came to Molly Grew, and it's very, very emotional to watch. So now I'm going to talk a bit more about the unicorn / Lady Amalthea. This is just after she becomes human, and she, as you can see here, she's really wobbly. She's having to like lean on the tree. She's kind of like a deer that's just got its legs, and the other two are kind of just watching her. Molly tries to comfort her, but she kind of can't because she is having an existential crisis. And this is the discussion that they have when Amalthea she's like coming to terms with the fact that she has a human body now. And I think the last bit of this is really devastating when she says, "I feel this body dying all around me. I'm afraid of this human body more than I was of the Red Bull afraid." Someone commented when I said that I was doing this talk yesterday, that every time you watch this film, you get something different out of it. And I think that as a cis woman who, when you grow up, and you suddenly realize that you're going to have to become an adult at some point, when you sort of reach puberty and when you reach adolescence. This is exactly what it feels like. it feels like you have gone from being a immortal being with no concept of time or space, with death. You never have to think about death. But then when you become a woman, suddenly you have to think about mortality, and that is horrible, and it is very, very sad. And I think that that's how it feels, basically, is what I would say about that. And this friend also mentioned that you identify with different characters over it, and she was saying how she didn't really think much about Molly Grew when she first watched it, but when she got older, she realised, like, oh yes, and there is also this other older character who was also sad about having lost her innocence and having not seen her, and that's, yeah, it's really sad. So it's about this ambivalence of becoming a woman. Maybe not even ambivalence, just it sucks. It's awful having to think about your body all the time and having to realize that every month, if you get a monthly reminder, you're closer to death, is what this feels like. And this is the song that I have included, and it's the song that I took the title of the talk from. It's very, again, it's very emotional to watch, and she's basically just like, now I'm a woman, I don't understand everything, I don't understand anything, things are awful, and I've lost what I used to be. When she is singing this, she is walking around the King Haggard's castle, and there are lots of tapestries, and she is standing in front of them, thinking about what she's lost. Fun fact, they had a tapestry designer in the film, so yeah, lots of attention to detail was paid there. And I just think this is a really beautiful screenshot of her stood in front of her past self, thinking about it, and it's just really sad. Another thing that happens to her when she has just become human, when she meets King Haggard, he looks in her eyes and he can't see himself. He looks in her eyes and he can see the forest reflected back. But after some time as a human, he cannot see himself anymore. And that's because she's lost what she used to be. She's lost her connection to her past through growing up. She's lost that immortal innocence. Yeah, it's really sad. I wasn't really sure what to do with this, but I kind of wanted to put it out there. She has a reverse magical girl transformation. When she is turned from her human form back into her unicorn form, she gets this big sparkly moment, and that's where her power is. It's in her unicorn form. It's not in her being a woman. She's not part of this monstrous feminine castrating all of this horrifying stuff. She's an inverse of that, I think, is what I potentially think is going on here. Also, it's just interesting to see how they animated this bit. Sorry, the screenshot is a bit out of focus, but it's very hallucinatory and very odd. I'm now going to talk a little bit about Amalthea and Lear's relationship. So they have this relationship, which in the film happens in like 2 seconds flat. It's her first romantic relationship. What I think is kind of happening in this bit is they could never really be together. Look at them in this screenshot. They are in 2 different sides of the castle. They are like physically separated by this thing in the middle of them. She is in the foreground, he is in the background. They're supposedly having a love duet. Doesn't really bode particularly well. I just thought this was sweet, that this is how Lear talks to her in the film. She gets this in the book. He writes her like a long, beautiful poem letter kind of thing. In the film, he writes, "I love you," and that's it. It's just nice and direct. However, during this love song, they go into a sort of forest scene, and they are walking around in this beautiful forest. However, she's thinking about her former self. They're not going to be able to end up together, no matter how much she wants that, because she's not really like mature enough for it, because she's really a unicorn. She's not a real woman. Thinking about her. I'm now going to talk a little bit about Prince Lear. I would apologise for the pun. I'm not going to apologise for the pun because I think it's funny. He ends up sacrificing himself to save the unicorns. The way this happens in the film is really, really quick. But in the book, again, it's a little bit longer and it makes a little bit more sense. So the gang is walking through the castle to try and find the Red Bull, and they tell Lear that Amalthea is actually a unicorn. His response to this is, as you can see, "I love whom I love," which is lovely and fits with his characterization as just a nice guy. Amalthea also then says back to him, "I want to sack off this whole quest. I just want to be with you. I am not actually a unicorn. I'm a real woman." And Lear says, "No, we're not doing that. I just heard your story and I want to do this instead. I don't necessarily want to like be with you forever." The continuation of that part of the quest is more important than them being together as a couple. He's basically prioritizing long-term stuff over short-term romantic happiness with a woman who he's just found out is actually a unicorn. And it's about a different kind of happy ending. It's not about a short-term romantic happy ending. It's about a long-term species level happy ending. And Lear is like forcing that through. Lear's hero moment. So this is when he confronts the Red Bull. That's what happens. He dead. And the final confrontation, basically the unicorn gets her power to be able to drive the Red Bull into the sea from Lear's death. His Jesus moment gives her that power. Then all the unicorns come out of the sea. This is all very, very beautiful. And then they take down the patriarchal locus of panopticon control by smashing it. And King Haggard dies. And this is the ending, which is very sad and ambiguous. And yeah, she wanders off into the distance, and that's it. That's the end. You don't see her reuniting with any unicorns. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in the book either. She doesn't, even though it sort of, I think as a younger viewer, you might think, oh, she's going off to find her friends. You don't see that. That does not happen, because she is different, and she isn't sad because she's saved a whole species, but she does regret. In the book, there is a whole ending postscript with Lear, who goes off to be king, and he's just a good ruler, and that's the ending they chose for the book. The film is more centered on the unicorn than it is on Lear's sort of contribution, and it's the ending again is this sort of extremely sad and ambiguous sort of lost first love feeling. And I think that's why I sort of said it's about the ambiguity of adulthood, it's about the ambiguity of growing up, it's about the ambiguity of sort of growing into being a woman and what that actually means. Doesn't mean it's not about constant progress and happiness, Sometimes it's about longer term things, which mean short term unhappiness and maybe even loneliness. And it's really sad. And on that massive downer of ambiguity, that's the end of my talk. Does anybody have any questions? You can look at my bibliography while you think about it. Is she no longer immortal? Good question. It's not, the film doesn't give any indication as to whether she is or isn't. I would argue that she probably still is immortal. I mean, it would make sense either way. I think it's ambiguous because she's lost her innocence, because she's done all this stuff. But it's not explicit as to whether she is or isn't in the film, I don't think. I have not read the graphic novel. I didn't know that there was a graphic novel. I would like to read the graphic novel. I only read the book this last few months because I knew I was doing the talk. So no, I haven't read the graphic novel, but I would like to. Maybe I will seek it out. I'm glad that you found it interesting. It was fun to do. Do I think the movie celebrates the feminine? Yes, definitely. I think that it celebrates lots of different types of femininity. Also, I think that the monstrous feminine isn't. I vibe with the monstrous feminine. The monstrous feminine is good. I think that you can celebrate the monstrous feminine by just enjoying it and getting a kick out of the control that these monsters do have. I think also that the unicorns, sort of the fact that she revives Leah, and all of the unicorns escape at the end, I think that's a celebration of the feminine. I would say that them escaping out of the panopticon is a big celebration of the feminine, even though it had to be because Leah sacrificed himself. Leah sacrificed himself for the good of this species, which is coded as feminine, I think. So yes, I would agree. Also, like they're beautiful. Like the animation of the unicorn and Amalthea is extremely beautiful, and I would argue that that's a celebration of the feminine as well. Interesting, a different last unicorn written by the same author. It is very different. I would like to know more about this. I don't know anything about that other version. The boobs in this film, like, why? The boobs on the tree, the multiple boobs on the harpy. I say why. It's because they're monstrous, and this is like how you get at the abject. It's by taking what you expect and then putting it in where you wouldn't expect and then making it monstrous, and that's horrifying, but also intriguing. Like, it's intriguing because you're staring at it like, has that harpy got 3 boobs? Like, yeah, that harpy does have 3 boobs. Does that tree also got boobs? Yeah, that tree also does. And it just, yeah, it blows your mind a little bit. Yeah, it is a maiden, mother, and crone sort of thing. But I think that Molly isn't really, she's kind of a mother figure. She's not a literal mother figure. She acts as a mother figure to the unicorn. Molly Fortuna is definitely a crone. Maybe the unicorn had to be turned back into a unicorn to sort of regain her maiden status, because if she'd have stayed as Amalthea, she would have lost it, because she probably would have got married to Leah. And yeah. Partially a celebration. I feel like, yeah, it's fine though. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a mix of gnarly stuff and non-gnarly stuff in animation with regards to female characters. It's all about just exploring what that means and how that comes across, I think, basically. Interesting. I do not know about the legal issues that the author had with his manager. I didn't really look a huge amount into the context of the book, I have to say. But maybe that would be an interesting thing to look at. You can only talk about so much stuff with context. Like I probably could have done an hour-long chat about, let's talk about production context, but production context isn't really my speciality. I'm more on the analytical side. I tend to I put in the bit of production context that I think people will find interesting, but I don't go into loads of it. As a kid, the boobs and the harpy totally went over. There we go. Yeah. It really sticks out. The tree bit, that particular bit of humor isn't really like anything else in the film. And it's also animated in quite a different way. I rewatched Roger Rabbit this week with friends, online obviously. And the trees in that reminded me of the tree in this. The animation in Roger Rabbit actually reminded me of the animation in this, like the weird OTT extra femininity added on top. It's very unnerving and creepy. It reminds me a bit of a pantomime dame in English culture. That's what the tree sort of comes across as, is weirdly sexualized, very uncomfortable to watch. A really good example of the monstrous feminine and abject. I ignored all of everybody else's analysis other than my own, so I have not watched it. No, I probably I could have done. There were some really interesting articles that I came across, but I didn't really want to bring too much other stuff from other people into it. There was a really interesting article on the book about posthumanism and how the book brings forward more of these boundary crossings between humans and animals and things being in liminal spaces. That's the term I'm looking for. But I decided to ignore that so that I could do my own analysis. I find when I'm writing stuff like this, I don't want to look at too many other arguments other people have made, apart from sort of to briefly check that what I'm saying isn't massively ripping people off, because I find it influences me too much. And then I have trouble kind of getting my own thoughts out from underneath other people's, is what I find when I'm doing analysis. It's fucking grim. It is probably, I'd say, maybe 10 degrees Celsius outside. It snowed a little bit this morning. I'm a little bit worried about my plants because I did some pruning a few weeks ago, and everything I read was don't prune too early because what if there's more frost? And now it's snowed again. So yeah, it's not very nice. I've had to put the heating on, but it's fine because I'm inside. Yeah, that's exactly what I think is going on with the Red Bull. I think that's exactly it. The Red Bull is the monstrous form of the patriarchy. It's a really good, straightforward patriarchal metaphor. He is a he, he's referred to as he, is trying to push feminine coded things into the sea so that they can be enjoyed by a man, which is exactly what pushing women into societal norms does. Also, it's for the benefit of patriarchy. It doesn't snow that often here. It snowed twice this week. It's been horrible. It was really lovely last week. It was 20 degrees. I sat in my garden, and now it has gone back to the weather that the UK, especially the north, is known for, just in time for some outdoor restrictions to be lifted. Yeah, it's not great, but yeah. The butterfly, the butterfly I didn't really talk about, but he's really interesting. The butterfly is a character that appears at the beginning of the book and the film, and he is the one who sets the unicorn on her quest by singing her a really annoying song, which she then goes, oh wait, there are other unicorns, and follows his instructions. And he sings a folk song to her. I sort of just went, oh, that's really whimsical, but I don't have anything to say about it. Also, I couldn't really read a gender onto the butterfly, so I couldn't really include it in this chunk of analysis. But there's probably some stuff about folklore that you could probably look at with the butterfly. The butterfly, interesting, but also a bit annoying. He is really annoying. Yeah, the way that he sings in the film is it kind of gets on your nerves a little bit. Yeah, Red Rover, and also Bill Bailey, which I believe that the song that he sings is the song that the comedian Bill Bailey took his name from, but I don't really know anything else about that, I'm afraid, admitting ignorance on my lack of research on the butterfly. Yeah, the butterfly is literally just at the beginning. I don't think he appears as a character. I think there are other background butterflies that maybe turn up, but there's definitely not another talking one. He's the only one. Maybe he's the last talking butterfly. Maybe he's got his own story to tell. Who knows? Not to me, because I didn't look into it, so I don't know. He's less annoying in the book. He is less annoying in the book. He gets a little bit more character development. It's the same with everyone in the book. They all get more character development. Plot devices that seem very inscrutable are less inscrutable in the book because they don't happen in the space of 30 seconds on screen. They happen over 4 pages. So characters have like more time to be less annoying. The tree is less weird in the book as well. It's more like mystical and less creepy, I think. I do like the drunk skeleton and the pirate cat. The pirate cat, I wanted to say something about, but again, I couldn't really think of anything other than the pirate cat is cool. The pirate cat has an eye patch on and a peg leg, and he talks with a pirate accent, and he's really cool. The drunk skeleton is interesting from the point of view of like boundary crossing and liminal spaces, which again is what that article I mentioned speaks about a lot. I mean, if you're drunk, hopefully you're happy as well. I didn't really like the skeleton or the cat that much when I was little. I was just obsessed with the unicorn and Lady Amalthea. I didn't really care about any other characters. I was only here for the princess and the unicorn. I literally didn't give a shit about anything else. Yeah, because that's what it's like being a girl. Sometimes you don't care about anything else. You're only there for the princesses. Yeah, the skeleton is really interesting though. With transubstantiation is about turning water into wine, and it's like a religious thing. It's a Catholic thing, and that's exactly what he does. And he's another one of these like half magical, weird in-betweeny marking the boundary between one space and another kind of things. He's really, really interesting. I think that there's probably some stuff in that article about him. Yeah, Princess of the Unicorn, honestly, that you could have said that about. I mean, there's a reason that I'm into Lita fashion, honestly, because sometimes that's all you want to think about. You don't want to think about reality or Red Bulls or panopticons. You just want to think about princesses and unicorns and look at ladies with nice hair and big eyes. And yeah, I think that getting your hair that color, unless you have naturally lighter hair, is probably quite difficult. You could probably get some wigs. I haven't seen any cosplay, I don't think, of her before. I would like to see some cosplay of her. I'm sure there's some really, really good stuff out there. And yeah, there's a chance you want to be the unicorn. As both Molly and Schmendrick, I think that I am probably King Haggard. I saw people like talking, like tag yourself. I think that I'm King Haggard, unfortunately. Like, my job is to be King Haggard. I work a very everything has to be very rigid and within the rules, and if it's not within the rules, I have to throw it away. That's my job. And I think that that's King Haggard's deal. And like, my job isn't really very connected to reality either. It's all data. And I think that if King Haggard was alive now, maybe he would be doing a job like mine. Maybe he'd be like a university vice chancellor or something. I don't know. Or someone in charge of IT somewhere. That's probably what King Haggard would be. Well, I'm nearly at the end of my hour. I would like to thank everyone very much for joining me today. And it's been really nice to see people asking questions. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Mystical Tea Garden. And I'd like to thank Rosé Forêt for letting me do this. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, go and rewatch it if you can. And go and read these books. They're all really good. Analyze everything. I'll stop sharing now.